Hello, this is CyberCity Productions. Welcome to the first audio recording of Who Said Family is Blood, Part 1. Please enjoy. Who Said Family is Blood by Ender Kitty and Cybergeist. Read by Cybergeist. Chapter 1. Lovely weather in this cell. There was a time where Tommy used to love watching the sky, with its brilliant sunsets and spiraling blanket of countless stars that he could never remember the names of. He remembered trips, walks, and hikes where he would travel far from the bright lights of the city, so that he could stare up at those shimmering starlights without pollution clouding his vision. Even now, he wished he could see them. Not the strange twists of foreign light he saw so infrequently now. No, he wanted to see that familiar night sky from Earth, with his feet solidly on the ground. Well, he'd always loved to see the night sky and watch the films involving its vast expanse. He never actually wanted to go to space. He had been more than content on the solid surface of his homeworld, where everything was familiar. The sprawling forest near his home city, the alleys, stores, shops, and that one old lady in the bakery named Clementine. Clem, who always gave him free pastries when he dropped by. Those woods with their familiar scent of sticky sap, and the thick scent of the earth beneath his feet. The smell of his home. All of that was gone now, his whole world light years away, just because he wanted to look at the stars he'd been staring at for 15 years, replaced by a new set of stars for another series of years, but not by choice. Yeah, that's right. Looking at the stars had given him new ones to look at, because Big Man Tommy in it? Yeah, looking at the stars had gotten him kidnapped, and not by some creeps in the woods. No, Tommy in it would never be taken down by such normal means. No, Tommy had been kidnapped by aliens. And so, at the wondrously mature age of 17, while watching the stars, Tommy in it, the biggest of all men, got himself kidnapped by aliens. Brilliant. Truly. Still, he will admit this latest cell is kind of cool. It was bland like most cells, obviously, but it also wasn't white or grey like human jail cells. It was sort of a cream peach colour, lit by a warm, dull, orangish light. A warm light that kept the only other interesting thing in the cell alive. Flowers hung in a strange sort of lattice across the ceiling. They were a deep, almost red pink, and every once in a while they'd release a yellowish spore like dust into the room. Which, while the stuff seemed to make him sneeze a lot and smell slightly of how he imagined chloroform would smell, were more annoying than anything else. He had the oddest feeling, though, that they were probably supposed to do more than that. Mostly based on what the weird aliens who'd kidnapped him had done when they'd first checked on him after they'd thrown him in here. 'Cause when he'd woken up after that encounter and nearly broken the door down, the aliens who'd been on the other side of the glass watching him had seemed both extremely surprised and downright terrified. It was especially funny for him when a pair of the stupid aliens had come in with cattle prods in hand. Which, rude, he wasn't a cow. Besides, even if he was, cows deserve better than that, honestly. Only to immediately pass out. Apparently, that's what the flower things were for, and unlike him, they weren't immune. Ha! Take that, wimps. Another win for Big Man Tommy in it. Like, seriously, a flower knocked them out? He's heard of flowers on Earth being used as herbs and teas and stuff, but to knock people out effectively? Weak. A few other aliens dragged their bodies out minutes later, just when Tommy was getting bored enough to start poking the unconscious ones. But these other aliens were apparently smarter and were wearing some weird gas masks, so as to not immediately drop dead. Actually, did the spores kill them? He hadn't really been able to tell if they'd been breathing or not. They looked so weird. Freakishly tall and bony, with skin a porcelain white. Perfectly smooth, round heads, with different numbers and styles of horns, no faces, deadly-looking claws, and joints that weren't actually connected, and just sort of float. Basically, overall, they were some pretty eldritch-looking things. He hates looking at them. After all, they're the reason he's here on this latest ship. The ones that prodded and tested him before they'd shoved him into this, well, admittedly, this pretty okay cell, all things considered. For such tall twerps, they have such brittle legs and arms. In his first round of testing, before they figured out how to properly restrain him, he had managed to take 4 of them down before they got a needle in him. Admittedly, the rest after that point was pretty hazy, but he's pretty sure he also took another one's arm on his way down. Serves them right. Jerks. After that, they'd always taken extra precautions with him before taking him in for testing, but the gas only worked once before he'd started getting used to it, much to the thing's panic. And their armor was largely ineffective against him, so he generally managed to always get in at least one hit before they could drag him off for testing. Since he can't really tell the stupid things apart, he's also unsure if he's ever killed any of them. He tried to tell them apart by the horns and colored markings, but as far as he's been able to tell, all the ones he's attacked have never come back. Maybe they just take longer than humans to heal? Like, he's never actually broken a bone before, but surely it can't take that long to heal. Well, actually, scratch that. He remembers having a teacher. His name was Sam. He's an awesome dude, and he broke his arm, needed a cast for at least 2 months, so maybe they are still healing. He doesn't know how much time has passed, so he'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's only been a week? Maybe a month? He honestly doesn't know anymore, and it's starting to unnerve him, this endless passing of time that he can't track properly. Luckily, they seem to have mostly gotten tired of trying to test him. Or maybe they were just running out of people. Either way, he's recently discovered he isn't the only prisoner on the ship. Since the last round of drugs had worn off enough that he could see and move his head a little as they dragged him back to his cell, he's apparently in a massive cell block that goes on for at least 3 halls of cells, all nearly identical to his, just varying in size, all with the same flowers in them, and all seemingly unconscious. So, yeah, maybe it was odd that he was the only one conscious. But honestly, he was probably just that big of a man. The fools must have expected him to pass out like the other aliens, hence their extreme reactions to him being awake. And sure, granted, at first the smell of the things had given him a massive headache and the strongest urge to sleep, but after a nap he'd found that the flowers no longer bothered him and honestly just smelled kinda nice. Anyway, here he was, sitting in this stupid cell, staring at the flowers and trying not to breathe in the spores. Sure, they don't put him to sleep, but they do make him sneeze, and he isn't exactly a fan of that. Okay, and sure, he could have put his blanket over his face so he doesn't have to sort of dance around them, but, well, it's something to focus on while he waits. Okay, so maybe he's a little on edge from the past few days, he thinks, since the testing has petered out. He doesn't know what the aliens plan to do with him, and he's nervous, okay? After the first day, maybe, he started shouting, yelling, and cursing with all the curse words he's ever learned at them. He gets fed at least twice every cycle, and he doesn't really know what it is, other than, well, meat. 'Cause it's definitely meat. The first time they had tried to feed it to him raw, the blue flesh sitting in a stinking pool of purple blood on his plate, and the unmistakably sweet smell of rotten flesh came from a blackened part of it. He flat out refused to put it anywhere near his mouth, and kept refusing until he was on the brink of starvation. Only then did the aliens give it to him in a different form. Still nasty, but he could at least tell by the slight char that it was cooked. So yeah, nasty mystery meat. His only form of sustenance. Truly, he lived like a king in this cell. Well, not only, he supposes, because he also is given one weird bag of water a day? It's the size of his forearm, so it's decent amount, honestly, but still not enough to completely satisfy him. Like, sure, he'd live. It's not going to kill him, but it's not ideal. So because he's the great Tommy in it, he stores at least half of them, hidden in his blankets in the event that even this meager blessing will be taken from him. Overall, his situation could be so much worse. It's still not a great situation, but he's not being tortured or poked anymore, and he's scared the aliens pretty darn well if he does so himself. He's already tried breaking out, and only once had he gotten close. It involved a whole lot of adrenaline, brute strength, and surprise. At the beginning, during his first few days in this cell, he'd managed to work up enough adrenaline to charge at the glass in between himself and the aliens, when they'd come with more weapons than usual and their body language murderous. They'd looked ready to kill him. And, well, Tommy had always been more of a fight person, so in his panic and rage, he'd thoughtlessly charged the glass that let them see into his cell. The sheer force of his momentum and his sudden inability to feel pain or fear, blessed adrenaline, his beloved, allowed him to ram into the glass a grand total of 3 times before the constant shocking of the stun guns had finally managed to subdue him. They'd ended up changing his glass to something thicker while he was knocked out, and he had a suspicion it had something to do with the crunching sound and spider webbing of cracks he'd seen in the glass before he'd passed out. Honestly, he didn't think the thicker glass could be much of a problem with how fast the first stuff had begun to break down, not with how little pain he felt when high on fear. Still, so far nothing had scared him enough to get his adrenaline pumping enough for another attempt. So maybe that's a moot point. Lost in his thoughts, he hadn't really been paying attention to his pacing, and now found himself feeling rather tired. Sighing, he lays back down on the blankets, if you can even call them that. They're more like rags, old, torn, and smell faintly of some type of oil. He knows it's clean, as he could get it with some spare water, but the smell clings to the fabric. His boredom is slowly bleeding into sleepiness, and he abruptly finds his eyes shooting open with a strange sound. He honestly doesn't know when he fell asleep. Maybe he hadn't. In all honesty, it could have been a trance, really, half sleep, half awake. Anyway, he's feeling sleepy. He's just going to close his eyes again. He was rudely interrupted from trying to return to sleep by a resounding echo of some clangs and clings. The guards must be back. That's odd. They've already given him this food and water earlier. Are they going to try getting him out for tests? Ha! He'd like to see them try. Maybe he could be entertained by this. Maybe even get a surprise attack in if he stays still. Make them think he's sleeping. With this foolproof plan he just thought of, he stays still, pretending to be asleep. Of course, there's also the chance this has nothing to do with him, and they're just grabbing one of his neighbors. But hey, he's bored. He can hope. He can hear them walking closer, along with muffled talking? Though not muffled in the sense of through a wall, but muffled like they were trying to put rags over someone's mouth and that person tried talking. He hears a thud. No, wait. It's kind of like a struggling sound, like someone kicked the floor. Oh, did they bring in another alien? Now he just feels bad. It didn't seem nice to be stuck in a room and instantly get knocked out because of some flowers. He's internally debating the merits of just abandoning his surprise attack when he hears his door open. More alien talk that he has no hopes of understanding. Some weird crackling sounds? Those are the gods. Then a warped croon? It's the best way he can describe it, honestly. It reminds him of those Enderman sounds from Minecraft. And then some weird humming buzzing sound? Okay, screw the surprise attack plan. He needs to know what the heck is going on. He shifts and begins to try getting up, only to realize he's managed to tangle his legs in the rags. See, they gave him decently long rags because of his height, which, sure, might make calling them rags inaccurate, but really it's the only word he can think of to describe the long strips of fabric. But that's a thought for later, since his movements hadn't exactly gone unnoticed, and while he can't turn around to see just yet, he can hear them frantically toss something into his cell, something that lands with a thud and a more panicked-sounding buzz, before the door closes with a slam, shutting off a trailing screech, is whatever made the crooning noise from before protests, though what exactly it was protesting remains to be unseen. After a solid half-minute or so, he managed to finally untangle himself from his prison and finally see what the heck was tossed in here with him. As he begins to turn around, he really doesn't know what he was expecting. Maybe new food? Some toy? Heck, some bomb that'll finally knock him out. But whatever he was expecting, it certainly wasn't this. Is that a baby alien? Truly, he was not expecting some alien that looks like a bee, a goat, and a deer in one gene pool. Especially not one this tiny. What even was his life? Thank you for listening to part 1 of Who Said Family is Blood by Ender Kitty and Cybergeist. Many thanks to Orion, our editor, Mint, our moderator, and to our server and subscribers for your support. Have a good day. Stay tuned for part 2.